Hey, beautiful soul. Welcome to Spirit Speakeasy. I'm Joy Giovanni, Joyful Medium. I'm a working psychic medium, energy healer, and spiritual gifts mentor. This podcast is like a seat at the table in a secret club, but with mediums, mystics, and the spiritual luminaries of our time. So come behind the velvet ropes with me and see inside my world as I chat insider style with profoundly gifted souls. We go deep, share juicy stories, laugh a lot, and it wouldn't be a speakeasy without great insider secrets and tips. You might even learn that you have some gifts of your own. So step inside the Spirit Speakeasy. Hey, beautiful soul. As always, I'm very excited for our conversation today. So many of you tell me on a consistent basis that you feel like you can't meditate, you don't know how to meditate, you think you're doing meditation wrong. Well, today we have a meditation expert. Not only is she a trained meditation teacher and certified, she's going to tell us her whole story of that, how that came about for her, but she's someone who has a background in tech, in the corporate world, who did not come from a space of meditation. So she has some great tips, some great suggestions. She has a free guided meditation that she offers on her website. And we really get into this additional conversation about the gifts that have started opening up for her and the experiences, the mystical experiences as part of this meditation work over time, plus these beautiful understandings that she has about the way that our universe works, about the way that time and energy actually work. So it's a fascinating conversation. I had a great time. I would have loved to have talked to her. You guys will be proud of me. I didn't even ask tons and tons of questions because our conversation was just so rich already that I didn't even go into all the extra elements that we could have gone into. We could have talked for hours. This conversation flies by. And I know that you're going to really not only love the meditation tips and techniques and tools, but the conversation into more of the spiritual realms and the way our soul works and our higher self and time. So without further ado, here is my conversation with the one and only Kara Goodwin. Hey, beautiful soul. Welcome back or welcome in for another episode of Spirit Speakeasy. Our guest today is Kara Goodwin. Kara's a certified meditation teacher and the host of the Meditation Conversation podcast. Kara's passionate about helping those who wish to expand beyond their body, thoughts, and emotions to tap into the wisdom and gifts within them. She uses meditation, mindfulness, breath work, and works with the subconscious to help others grow into higher versions of themselves. While she derives great fulfillment from swimming in mystical waters, she equally values nurturing her earthly side through motherhood, animals, and plants. Welcome in, Kara Goodwin.
Thank you, Joy. I'm so happy to be here.
I am so excited to have you here and to hear about your journey. I don't know if you know this, but for me, I believe meditation really is the foundation of being a working medium. So I'm excited to hear. As I was telling you before we hopped on, I read a little bit about you. So for me, it felt like such a big block in my life to commit to meditation. I felt like I couldn't do it. I felt really unsuccessful. And I know that that's a part of your story. So it's one of the reasons I'm so excited to have you here to share all about it.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. And I know that that's a lot of people's story. I think anybody who it would consider themselves a meditator today has been through that stumbling block where it's like, wait a minute, I
Yeah.
thought this was going to be easy. I'm not supposed to be doing anything, right? Like, why is it so hard not to do something?
Well, I think that could be a big hurdle too, because we want to feel reasonably successful, right?
Right. And so I definitely had that. And before I actually developed a proper, what I would call a proper practice, meaning just continuous and it was dedicated and I was dedicated to doing it. I would I would hear from Joy Giovanni and she would talk about how meditation was so foundational to her becoming a medium and how critical it is in everybody's lives. And I would think, everybody's supposed to be able to do this and I'm going to do it. There's some secret power in there, and
Yeah.
and I would try it. And I think for one thing, I was probably trying for like, I'll meditate for half an hour, right away. And all those things, and not really knowing what I was doing. So, like, I'm going to sit here, I'm going to close my eyes and not fall asleep, but I'm not going to think. And then very quickly, thoughts would come in, and then you're just spending like all this time getting frustrated that you keep thinking. And so that's the experience that I kept having. I would get inspired and I'd want to try meditation. And then I would very quickly kind of it would fizzle out because I wouldn't feel any effects and I wouldn't really know what I was supposed to be doing. So
Yeah.
um, that is up until a few years ago when my whole world turned upside down. So I was living abroad. I was living in Italy with my family, and I have two kids and a husband. And
I want to
um,
pause you because this is an interesting part of your story that I want to make sure people know. You come from an IT background, like not a yoga teacher, not a,
Right. Yeah, that's a great point. So I up until this point, up until we moved to Italy, I was a corporate, working at blue chip companies, consulting at blue chip companies, IT background, eventually going into sales. And so I was very, mainstream and very focused on also, the balance of having kids and little kids at that point. And so yes, that then we moved to Italy and I stopped working so that we could have that experience. Um, and a couple of years into that experience, things just like one thing after another, tragedy upon tragedy was just everywhere I turned. So
yeah.
it started with my sister-in-law passed away, and she was one of my closest friends. She took her life
Oh, I'm
really
so sorry for your
shockingly.
loss.
Thank you. She had two little kids, and it just really kind of really threw us for a loop. We knew she'd been depressed, but just really was very shocking.
Yeah, of course.
Um, and like 3 weeks later, our dog died. So
Oh,
again,
wow.
not to put those on the same level. I
Hey,
am an
we
animal
believe
lover.
animals are family members here too. So,
They are. And but just that on top, like compiled, like, oh my gosh,
yeah,
we're
of
already going through
course.
this, and now our dog. A few weeks after that, my stepdad had to have a surgery. He had spinal stenosis, so they had a really
Man.
delicate surgery on his brainstem. And of course, you don't know like what's going to happen with that. Luckily, that went
Yeah.
well. Bit of a recovery period and things like that, but that was another stressful, worrying thing. Um, and then shortly after that, my mother in law was hit by a motorbike when she was crossing the
Oh
street.
my gosh.
So she's mourning the death of her daughter and ends up in the hospital with all this
Wow.
trauma. And then by Thanksgiving of that year, my stepmom, leading up to Thanksgiving, was in the ICU with a failing heart, and she had a heart transplant the day after Thanksgiving.
My
So
goodness.
and to get to the top of the heart transplant list, you have to be very sick.
Yeah.
So that's an indication not only of just the seriousness of that level of surgery, but also just how sick she was up to that point. So,
Wow. Is this all in like a
um,
1 year
yeah,
span for you
this was
guys?
from the time that my sister-in-law passed away till the heart transplant was under 7 months.
Oh my gosh.
So,
Really getting tossed around by the waves of
yes,
life there.
exactly. And we were, like I said, we were in Italy. So my husband's English. So my in-laws were in England. My family was in America. And so we weren't even easily able to be with anybody as
Wow.
we keep getting this news and this news, and then you feel even further away. And
Yeah.
so it was just a whole heap of things. And that's just our immediate family, like my husband and my immediate family. We also had a very close friend who was in our wedding, 20 years ago. But in this time, he also was diagnosed with a brain tumor and he
Oh my
passed away the
goodness.
next year. But we're,
Wow.
dealing with like him and life and death situations too. So it was just sort of like everywhere we turned, It
Yeah.
just felt like bombs were going off in our lives, and so
Man.
that was really where I had been drawn to meditation over the years before that, and like I said, just kept giving up on it because I
Yeah.
wasn't making it a priority, and like I wasn't really feeling like I was getting anything out of it, and I also didn't really feel, I guess I did feel the need for it, particularly when I was working,
Hmm.
but because I didn't feel like I was getting a lot out of it, I didn't put a lot of time into it because I had very little time. So,
Well, and there's a
um,
difference between the need that we all feel from the stress of life and the desperation from this level of loss and tragedy.
exactly. Yes. Right. And this was really when it was like, okay, I don't even recognize my life anymore. And I feel
Yeah.
like every day that I wake up, like what's going to happen today?
Well, then
Who's
with
going to
two small
call?
kids too, right?
Right, right.
My
And it's like,
goodness.
if the phone, yeah, I don't want to answer the phone because every time my phone rings, it's bad news because you don't text
Wow.
bad news, you call for bad news. So anytime the phone rang, it was like, okay, what now? And really, it really was every time my phone rang, it was something huge. And
Wow.
um, so it was just a really hard time. And I, at this point, I was always really curious in things like mediumship. Probably didn't even know what that word was really back then, but like, you know, reincarnation, stories about children remembering past lives, that type
Yeah.
of ghost stories, all of that sort of like little bit of peek behind the veil of saying there is more going on than what we're led to believe. I loved reading books about things like that.
Hmm.
Um, but I didn't, at the same time, I didn't really, I was sort of not like a agnostic, I guess.
Yeah.
I had grown up believing in God. I'd always believed in God, but I had gotten to a point where I was like, I don't know, maybe it's just imagination or a control mechanism, or all these like cynical
Yeah.
ways to think about the purpose of believing in a God. And but in the midst of all of this, I distinctly remember we walked the kids to school when we lived there, and walking home and having this inner dialogue with God, well, monologue. And I was, like, okay, something needs to give here. This
Yeah.
is like, I really feel like this is a huge, you're trying to really get my attention here if you exist. And I've always felt drawn to meditation. I feel like there's something there with meditation, but I have tried it and I can't get anywhere with it. So I think I need like maybe a teacher. So if you're real and
Yeah.
you think that I should meditate, if this is like a wake up call for me, then point me to a teacher. Let me not
Yeah.
miss it, and let it be in English.
That's a good point.
Right, because, if it's going to be, I think by that point I had actually stumbled upon a meditation group that somebody in one of my Italian classes had invited me to, and I went to it, but it was in Italian and it
Yeah.
was not
Probably very
relaxing at all.
relaxing, but not what you needed.
Exactly. And because I was just trying to keep up and translate everything in my head, and I'm so through that, I was led to a teacher. Kind of, it's one of those in hindsight. I'm sure you've got
Yep.
things like this where you sort of throw it out there, and then it's like, and then things do start to happen, and you're like, okay, well, I'll try that. That
Yeah.
showed up, but I don't think I even necessarily was like putting it together, that because I was curious and I was looking out for it. So then, but looking back, I'm like, wow, it became really easy to find a teacher, like
Yeah.
once I put that out there.
That's such a good point, too, because I do think many of these things we only can recognize in hindsight, and we expect for media and for it to be this clear rom-com style. Oh, whoops! Now the feather takes me over here, like that movie Serendipity or whatever. And it's not
Yeah.
like that typically. Yeah, the teacher shows up, but you might not in the moment with everything going on realize like, oh, this is my moment.
Yes, right. And I know, like, a friend of mine just happened to recommend the book Awake. It's a documentary called Awake, and it's the story of Paramahansa Yogananda, who I'd never heard of. He's the author of Autobiography of a Yogi. Are you familiar with his?
No, I'm surprised too because I watch a lot of documentaries, so I'm like in my mind thinking like, have I seen that? And I've just forgotten because I watch a lot of them. Ooh,
Yeah.
that's interesting.
Well, it was funny because her mom recommended it to her. And then she's like, my mom just told me about this documentary. I feel like you would like it. And she's like, I haven't watched it yet, but let me recommend it. So I just watched it like really soon after. And I was like, oh my gosh, who is this person? I want to learn from him. He
Yeah.
died like in 1932, no, 1952. I think it was 1952. Anyway, he passed away a long, long time ago, but his teachings, there are still groups that teach his methods. And he was very much a like cause and effect, like do this with the breath and it will make your mind do this or make your body do
Okay.
this. And that was important with my corporate background, with my IT kind of
Yes.
analytical brain.
I
It
like
was
some action steps that are equatable to real time results. Like who doesn't like something we can test and prove ourselves, right?
exactly. Yes. So that was a really that his teachings and the organization that there are a few organizations that are associated with his work. That was really important to me for a couple of years. And then I, felt like I needed to move on from that. But I still do utilize those methods. Like when I teach myself, that's what I got certified in were his methods. And they're still a foundational part of my personal meditation and what I teach. But
Exciting.
that was the journey. And then once I did have a method and I had a teacher, I had several teachers at that time, all from the same organization, but that I could ask questions to when they came up and they could reinforce the teachings and we could meditate together.
Yeah.
And they were kind of helping to support this new habit that I was trying to develop. And it was a place for me to put my attention that was supporting the person I wanted to become,
Yeah.
which was important to me. Rather, that was definitely a missing element when I was just sort of spitballing it and I didn't know what I was doing. I mean, I think that like the reinforcement and having like seeing other people, being connected with other people who it's becoming important in their lives too, and how they're working around it or, they've been doing it longer. Like what happened with them when they had these stumbling blocks and
Yeah,
things like
there's
that.
bumpy parts in the journey, right? There's so much value in being able to have a mentor or a teacher or a group to,
Right.
I think it's sometimes with the beauty of technology, it's sometimes that missing piece when there's no component that involves conversation, ability to ask questions. I can imagine how valuable that was for you.
Yeah, exactly.
So then
So
you just smoothly sailed into how long did it take you before you felt like competent as a
that's
meditator?
that is such a great question. I don't even remember. I got certified to teach. I want to say like within a year and a half or 2 years, I think. And that was also, there are a lot of like yoga teacher training and that
Yeah.
kind of idea where it's like just go deeper into like the techniques and the methods. And so you're not necessarily going to teach, but you want to really like immerse yourself deeper in it. It was sort of like that. Like, oh, this course, learn to teach
Yeah.
meditation. Okay, let's dive in. Um, but yeah, I don't know how to answer that because it's always a practice, right?
Right.
So even with it being several years later now, and I have a daily practice and I think I'm past the point now where I'm like judging my meditations. I think
That's
that's
great.
a common thing where it's like, oh man, my mind was all over the place, or I was
Mhm.
really locked in there, or like I don't really pressure myself to, like, was that a good one or was it not?
Yeah.
Um, but I, yeah, I mean, I think it's almost like in those early years, I was doing these, again, I was part of that organization. So that was part of it too. They'd sometimes have these really long meditations, like
Oh
3 hour
yeah, I bet.
meditation or an 8 hour
Oh
meditation.
my gosh.
And, with having a family as well, that's all still in the house, that's a big commitment for me to be
Yeah.
like, okay, I'm going to give up my whole day, guys. And you're, like, don't bother me. I'm going to be in my room. Um, but I would do things like that where it's like, okay, they're saying that there are benefits to doing this for 3 hours, I'll do that. And I'm definitely less inclined to do that. And like, I don't really, um, I don't know. There is definitely benefit to doing that, but
Yeah.
um, I have not, I'm not as inclined to do that now. It's just like I can drop in deeper. I have noticed this about myself. I feel like this is common for many people, but I know it's true for me where like if I have a really long stretch of time, I will take forever to drop into meditation. I'll sit down and I'll pray and I'll like go through the motions, but I will feel like, oh, I'll just entertain this thought for a while because I've got 3 hours,
Yeah.
or I've
Three
got
hours
this
is a really long time.
right. Whereas if I'm really like, I've got to I've got to keep it concise, then I'm
Yeah.
much more focused, I feel like. So
Yeah. I have a question that it's okay if you can't answer. It's just
yeah.
something I ponder and think about with curiosity from my work, because I wasn't always in this work either. For me, things started to kind of open up and almost settle into place as I learned to understand the difference between the way we commonly talk about things and what the actuality of it is in either different wording, or does that make sense the way I'm asking it? Like when we first come to meditation, we're thinking, okay, everything's supposed to magically become quiet and I'm supposed to do this and it's supposed to feel like this. And in my experience anyway, which you're probably much more experienced than me, that's not those words and terms. And for me, the best way I can explain it is I just released an episode about being an empath, and the wording is that you will feel other people's emotions, but the assumption with that wording is that you will feel them equal to and as consciously as your own emotions, or in the same way. Do you know what I mean? Did you find that
Yeah.
with meditation too when you were learning,
Yeah, like
or
maybe
in teaching, I guess?
common misconceptions.
Yeah,
You
kind
think?
of. Or just like you'll hear the way someone's describing it. It's like, well, I know those words are sort of what it is, but not exactly what it
Yes.
is, you know?
Yeah, well, I think for sure in these spaces there's so much that's ineffable. It's
Yeah.
indescribable. It's like you try your hardest to put language to it.
Yep.
And I've been on both sides of that, where I'm like trying to explain something and I'm like, I know that you don't know where somebody's going to be able to meet you, right?
Yeah.
And um, so
These are our
sometimes
ambient noises here in my home
there,
studio.
there we
I live in a downtown area, so everyone that listens is used to them, and things pop off, and we just let the universe
That's right.
away.
They're really underscoring this point, apparently.
Yes, that's what I always say. Like, this is important. So
That's
sorry
right.
about that.
That's okay. But it's sort of like, you do your best with words. And then I've had it where people have tried to describe, like, I really want to understand something. And I really, somebody's trying to tell me about like a mystical experience they've had.
Hmm.
And I'm like, so what was that like? And they're like, it's
Yeah.
kind of like, when you're trying to fit your own experience into it to be able to say like, okay, I get it or I don't.
Yeah.
Um, with meditation, I mean, especially if you start experiencing energy, you start feeling yourself as vibration, as frequency. That is really, really difficult to try to convey,
Yeah, absolutely.
but you know it when you experience it, right?
Yeah.
And that's another example of like I have tried to understand like, well, how do you experience energy? And people describe it and it's like, well, yeah, I've until I've had that experience, it's really hard to understand. But one thing that comes to mind with what you were saying is that like I'm going to sit here and I'm not going to think. And that's something that I alluded to in the beginning
Yeah.
of like trying to meditate. I'm using quotation marks if you're just listening. Um, but trying to do the meditation, trying not to think. I'm supposed to just sit here and not think. And I think that is a misunderstanding. That's a misguided um, expectation of
Yeah.
meditation, where it's like we're not actually trying not to think, but it's rather being aware and mindful. And I don't feel that I really practice quote unquote mindfulness, but if we all understand what it means to be mindful, which is just to be aware of what's
Yeah.
happening, because so much is going on that we just don't pay attention to.
Yeah.
But it's like really paying attention to, oh, here's a thought, and I have thoughts all day long, and the same thoughts keep cycling through, and it's really easy for them to just be on autopilot and me to just almost be a victim of my thoughts. Like whatever thought pops up, that's what I'm going to think about.
Yeah.
And it gets my attention. If it pops in, it gets my attention. And then if another thought interrupts that, then that's what gets my attention. And I'm just, again, like just a victim of whatever's coming in rather
Yeah.
than being mindful, being aware, paying attention and saying, oh, suddenly I'm on the thought train. How did I get on the thought train? I was focusing on my breath, and now I'm suddenly thinking about being in my third grade classroom or whatever it is.
Making the grocery list, as we usually
Yes.
say. Like you're halfway down the grocery aisle and oh, wait a minute, I chased that rabbit down the thought rabbit hole. Here we are.
Yes, exactly. And so then it's just noticing like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm in thought. I'm at the grocery store, but I'm actually supposed to be in meditation. Let me disengage. And it's not a whole conversation. It's just an instantaneous, like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm on the thought train. Come back. I was focusing on my breath. Let me get back into the breath. Let me get back into noticing the breath and just know that we have a lifetime of paying attention to whatever thought comes up at any given time
Yeah.
without really any discernment about if we want to be thinking about that or not. And without maybe even any awareness that we have control over the thoughts that we entertain. So that's what that made me think of, is just
Yes,
the,
this
the
is so
change.
good. This is exactly what I'm this is
Yeah,
exactly what I'm asking.
right, because it's changing the narrative and the
Yeah.
expectation, because then, and that helps us also to not feel that we're terrible meditators, because everybody who tries meditation, everybody, well, maybe I shouldn't say that, because probably there's been somebody, Jesus, maybe when he started, he was great at it. I don't know. But most people, when they try meditation and they're in their early stages, or even when they have some experience, they're
Yeah.
going to get carried away by thought. And if you
Yeah.
have this attachment to, like, oh, that makes me a bad meditator, or that means I can't do this, or I'm not good at it, you're not going to enjoy it. and
Yeah.
and it's also not true. It's a training, like it's a practice. And so the more you can be dedicated to your practice and be dedicated to saying, like, oh, I got caught up in a thought, I'm coming back, you're just training yourself. That's just a training where it's like, oh, look at me, I would notice quicker and quicker when I get caught up in a thought, and then I'm able to come back and not get triggered by that and not tell
Yeah.
myself some story about what that means about my value. And
I think it's such an important, for me, it's like the most important point at the gates of like when someone wants to start into meditation, because I think that's where we kind of, go back to go and
yeah.
say like, okay, I guess I have to like, I guess I'm going to put this aside for a couple years and try again when I'm, whatever. And you said it earlier, it was that you now really are in a space where you don't have to judge your practice, which I think is so important to have. The earlier in our journey we can have permission for that, I think the better of just, well, can you define success as I showed up and sat and did my attempt today? Like, could it be an attempt instead of a, oh, my mind was very thoughtful. For me personally, it even after, like I said, I would have sworn to you years ago that I absolutely could not do it. And now after years of doing it, I still have certain days for, maybe I'm more stressed out, maybe there's more going on, that I notice my thoughts moving more frequently than other times. So I just think it's so important what you're doing and the way you're educating people, that no, everyone can access this practice. It's just about taking all of those expectations and judgments off of it. So I'm pretty excited about your work, if you can't tell.
Oh, well, thank you so much.
There's
Yeah.
so many different, oh, sorry to interrupt you. There's so many different types of meditations too. And I think that's somewhere else where the water gets a little muddy for people that are just, I know it was confusing for me early on. Will you just kind of touch into a little bit, even from your perspective as a teacher and with what you teach, some of the different types and like their purposes, so people can have a little bit more of like it's more of a buffet than a one way only, right?
Yes, I love that approach too, where it's like take what works. And this was one of the places where I got where I started to realize when when I first learned meditation, and the organization that I was learning from really benefited me for a couple of years, and then it was time to go. And
Yeah.
the reason that I started to feel that was because of the constriction and the restriction. It was like, this is the technique, this is what we teach, this is what we learned from Paramhansa Yogananda, and this is what there is. And if you get distracted by the next shiny thing, then you're going to get, pulled away from your enlightenment, or however,
Yeah,
they
it
wouldn't
becomes
say
more
it
dogmatic.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
even though the whole appeal in the beginning was like, we don't have dogma, this isn't
Yeah.
religion, whatever. But if you start to talk about other modalities, it's like, wait a minute, master didn't teach that.
Yeah.
And
That's
so,
interesting.
yeah, so that's where I started to feel a little bit like, ugh, you know, I'm just rehashing the same thing over and over, and I wanted to learn more. And there's so much out there.
Yeah.
And that's the other piece to it, is like, if you've tried a meditation and you're like, I did not get on with it, I didn't feel anything from it, I didn't enjoy it. Um, there are so many different teachers, there's so many different styles. There are moving meditations. You can learn how to combine like walking with meditation. You can use sound. There are a lot of
Yeah.
beautiful meditations that use sound. The breath is a really important element. There are all kinds of amazing breath work practices out there that can be incorporated into meditation. And I always like to start my meditations with breath work because of the direct effect it has on the nervous system. So it can like really easily shift you into that rest and restore sympathetic or parasympathetic nervous system
Hmm.
setting, so that you're out of that fight or flight that we're in. With modern living, we're in fight or flight so often. But the breath is like this backdoor, it's just physiological response to help calm your body. So there are all these different types of meditation, and there are also a lot of people who are guiding meditation. So
Yeah.
there's an app, Insight Timer,
Hmm.
they've got a ton of guided meditations. I've got a free 10-minute meditation on my website, and then I've got different guided meditations sprinkled throughout my podcast, which is Meditation Conversation. But lots and lots of resources for guided meditations, and that can make it so easy as well, because then you're
Yeah.
just following along. So somebody is telling you like, okay, now count, like inhale, and I'll tell you when to stop inhaling. Okay, stop inhaling. And now
Yeah.
hold your breath, and I'll tell you when to stop. Now stop holding your breath. Now exhale. And you just follow along, and your nervous system and your mind can relax in a different way than if you're trying to remember what the next step in the process is, and
Yeah.
you know if you're worried about time or whatever it might be. So there are so many options, and it's really, if you learn any sort of meditation, I talked about how it was so helpful for me to have a teacher
Hmm.
to help guide me, and it's a double-edged sword, right? So it's so helpful to have somebody who has experience, who can help you with this new terrain and kind of guide you along the way. And you want to be careful that you're not with somebody who says like, this is the only way, this is the
Yeah.
way, this is the fastest way, this is, those are red flags right there, where it's like somebody is like really benefiting from you following along what they're saying and not looking at anything else.
Yeah.
But just that, like, understanding that there are a lot of different things that you might resonate with, and there might be different things for different times of your life.
Yeah, that's a good
So
point.
once you have a couple of years experience, you may be attracted to a different type of meditation that might get you to the next kind of launching point.
Yeah.
Um, and that's completely valid. You know, for me, in my own experience, that's kept things from becoming dry, you know, from it
Mm,
becoming this like, okay, I'm just doing it because I'm supposed to do it every day, and not, you know, like there's no difference between that and just going to church every Sunday and sitting in a
yeah.
pew, because you're definitely going to get into heaven if you do that, because I sat here for an hour every Sunday and that's all I needed to do. Now I've checked that
Yeah.
box, and that's the same mentality of being like, well, I have to meditate every day because that's what I'm supposed to do, rather
Yeah.
than really like getting something out of it and it being this thing that lights you up and that you really enjoy doing. Um, I find that continuing to learn and to explore and try new things has been imperative for that.
I think that's so important. And I mean, I think it depends on the intention someone's kind of coming into a meditation practice with. Maybe it's that they realize they're stressed and need breaks in the day. Maybe it's better sleep. Maybe it's, all the any of the things. I want to talk about your guided meditation really quick. You have a few different options on your website. I have the free meditation version that you offer because I wanted to hear you guide meditation because I'm a nerd like that. I really liked it. It's available to everyone. Tell us where it is.
Yeah, so thank you. You can get that on karagoodwin.com. So I spell Kara with a K, or my parents spelled Kara with a K, and I just stayed with that. Um, but karagoodwin.com. And then right there on the home screen, I think it's like the second
Yeah,
section
we'll link
down
it in the
there.
show notes too, so everyone can find it much more easily wherever they're listening or watching.
Yeah.
That meditation that you did feels very relaxing, and it is guided, obviously, because you're guiding it.
Mhm.
Is there a general purpose for that meditation? Like, if someone's like, okay, what would I use this one for? How do you recommend people using it, or what are some of the ways?
Yeah, that particular meditation, it's very light filled.
Hmm.
And so it, to me, it is you just want to feel um, more
Yeah.
connected. I mentioned that when I began meditation in the beginning, I was basically agnostic. I was curious about things behind the veil, so to speak, but I wasn't totally convinced.
Yeah.
And I really was unsure about the whole God thing. Like maybe there were ghosts, but I wasn't sure about the God thing. Um, and so when I started meditation, it was very secular, very like, even though I was learning from monks, everything's so ironic, it's like I'm learning from monks. They're very spiritual, but so I was taught to pray. I would pray
Mm.
like before I would meditate on their online meditations, but then by myself, that wasn't really a big part of my practice for a while. Um, but now, as things have shifted, it's become like that's my primary reason is to connect with the spiritual world around us, to connect with my
Yeah.
own soul, with my own spiritual essence, with the eternal aspect of who I am. And that's always like my primary motivation for meditating. And so that meditation really felt like it was connecting people with their light, with their spirit. Um, so it's a pretty like it will make you feel calmer. It will
Yeah.
induce like um a state of calmness and relaxation. But that's kind of what's going on, behind with that, behind the
And
scenes, I
I
guess.
love that in that, just in that 10 minutes too, you actually are, you know this obviously, but you're layering in these very foundational ability or idea to move your awareness to different parts of your body, ability to come back to the breath and have it, fill all the way to your toes. And those, it feels maybe so simple in just like saying like, what do you mean I'm just moving my awareness? But it's that mindfulness, right? Kind of blended in of how often do we take time to like focus our energy into our knee or it is, I mean, I think it's a great little meditation. Highly recommended for anyone who wants to try it out. And like I said, I'll link it in the show notes. Is that what
Thank you.
happens for you as you continue forward into your practice? Do you start having more unexplainable experiences or more spiritually connected feeling experiences?
Yes. Well, thank you for the kind words about the meditation. And yes, I definitely, as I have gone deeper into meditation, I have started to have more of those mystical kind of non-physical, not, the ineffable, difficult
Yeah.
to explain experiences. Um, but funnily enough, like the most powerful ones that I have of that type of thing tend to be when I'm transitioning to sleep, but I
Mm.
don't actually go to sleep. I'm still awake and I'm alert and I'm aware, but then I'll start to see energy, feel energy, start to feel that I'm moving through different layers of densities and seeing different things, getting different insights. That can happen during meditation, but it's like 95%, sorry, 95% of the time that I experience the mystical things, it is in that space, like where I'm about to drift off to sleep and then I don't drift off to sleep. Um, and I
I know
just have
that
a
space
different.
that you're talking about. It's, and it is such a, do you feel like meditation has allowed you to, again, the wording's not good, for as long as you know me, everyone here is used to me complaining about the languaging of these things, but do you feel like it kind of helped you expand that space where you're more conscious of that in between space, that astral space, whatever word someone likes in there, of, okay, this is this in between time when I can just pause and be here and allow instead of just immediately transitioning to sleep?
Yes. So the more that it happens, the more kind of control, for lack of a better word,
Yeah.
there is in being on that edge without dropping over into
Yeah.
sleep. Um, but I have a long way to go before I master it. It's like there are a lot of times where it's like right there, and then I'm like, okay, if I want to go any further, like there's a really good chance I'm going to fall asleep.
Yeah. Yeah.
and and often I just fall asleep and or I just can't remember it. It's like I may not have
Mhm.
actually fallen asleep because there are definitely times where I will look at the clock and I've been awake for like an hour and a half. So in that time, at that moment, I remember what all has been happening. But then in the morning, I'll be like, well, I remember that I was awake for at least an hour and a half, but I can hardly remember, what came through or.
Yeah. And I mean, do you feel like it's that sometimes we are not accessing all of those things on the conscious level? I mean, I
Okay.
believe our soul still is traveling and experiencing and doing things, even though we might not consciously bring that information back. It's in our soul somewhere.
Yes, 100%. I love that. And that's a lot of times when I'm in this space, like even
Yeah.
just last night, I was in that space and I was telling myself, you will remember. And it was like a command, you will remember because I have so much experience of like it's all so familiar when I'm in it. And
Yeah.
I'm like, "Oh my gosh, yes, this again, but I've never been able to remember this." And then I'm like, it's like a command that I'm giving myself. You will remember, you will remember. And then who knows how much I'm actually remembering. I do
Right.
remember some, but I think you do. I think you're like the consciousness just goes places that the human aspect of us can't hold that frequency or can't
Yeah.
handle that. It can't resonate. And so we just lose access to it. Um, there is so much going on, in my opinion, so much going on that our consciousness is aware of, that our human aspect of that consciousness is not aware of. And I think, I don't know what you think about this, like that dreams are a lot, not maybe not all the time. I think sometimes dreams are just like processing
Processing, yeah.
things. And but I do believe that sometimes our dreams are like a screen. It's like a way that our mind, our human mind, comes in and makes sense of what the consciousness is doing. Like
Yeah.
when I have these mystical experiences or multidimensional experiences, most of a vast majority of my experience is seeing patterns, colors,
Mhm.
lights, hearing sounds, and just seeing this movement. It's like this constant like movement and feeling like vibrations within my body, um, feeling different areas of my brain, like almost like they're like fingertips touching different parts of my brain at this
That's so
like
cool.
in different places at the same time, but like it's an instrument
Yeah.
that's being played. And so things like that, rather than it being a being came to see me and told me this thing, and it's this being that I always see and they've always been with me. Like I hardly ever see beings. I will sometimes hear voices. Sometimes it sounds like I'm just picking up on, like I'm overhearing something inside my
Yeah.
head. Um, but it's very, very rarely like form. It's very rarely like a landscape. Like I was in this place and there was a garden, and it's very rarely like that.
Yeah.
But when I start to fall asleep, if I'm in that state and I do start to go over the edge and I notice like, oh, I'm falling asleep, because I can stretch that part out a lot of times too. But I'm like, oh, I'm in like my mind is making a dream. It's putting things over the top of the energy that I was seeing. So it's
Yeah.
like taking parts of the pure energy that I was experiencing and almost like draping it with form, and like a story starting to, like my mind's like creating a story out of what I'm seeing almost. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, I see that I'm like creating this story that's happening, and it's what I would know as a dream, but I'm not quite asleep, but I can tell, like, just give it a minute and I will completely fall asleep.
Yeah.
So because I've had that, I'm like, oh, I think our dreams in some cases are like overlays of work that our consciousness is doing or things that our consciousness is experiencing, but it's like how our human mind
Yeah, it has to like
perceives it.
filter through our own lexicon of experience, and it might be a little outside of that, but likely
Yeah.
not going to be. And I think sometimes that's why things are merged together in ways that are maybe not exact translations of what's happening. Or
Yeah.
in mediumship, the for me the way it works is essentially my soul's blending with the soul that's outside a body, and they're not putting new memories in there, but they can access my entire database of memories, whether I remember seeing it or not. So it's kind of similar to what you're saying, where it's like, oh, I might just have plucked that face of some random person that I saw at some point and don't remember and put it on this other thing because it's my system trying to
Oh,
translate it in a
yeah.
way that can be articulated or even written after a dream or something. Does that make sense the way I'm saying it
Yes.
out loud?
Yes. I love that. It's very complimentary to what I was saying. Yeah.
And there's so much overlap in all of this. It's one of my favorite things is, people that are even in just like totally different areas of this work have similar experiences or similar understandings. And
Yeah.
it's extra validating in some way. I think I like it a lot.
Yeah, completely.
Is that a part of, I know you teach quite a bit, different things. And then also with your podcast, you love sharing other people's work and experience like I do.
Uh,
Um, is that part of what you teach in your meditation, is how someone can extend those times if they get to that advanced place in their work?
yeah, that's something that I talk about I have a group that I meet with like once or twice a week called the Healing Hearth, and we will meditate together, but that's also where I will share things on consciousness and give suggestions on, try this to, um, you know, work on manifestation or
Yeah, real
to,
life stuff too.
right. Yeah, yeah. Exactly. But that's where I will, and that's a range, group of people that some of them have been meditating for a while, some are newer. So it's not always the more advanced stuff, but I will, give what I can
Yeah.
when it's right there. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, I had this little list of questions, but
Mhm.
I think we probably covered most of them as we're talking. As we're talking about that kind of in between time in the dream space or in that transitional space, one of the things that I wanted to ask you was about your experience in through this work and those experiences, understanding more about how time works. That's always so
Mhm.
fascinating to me.
Yeah. Yes. So that was one of those experiences that I was talking about that I had, at nighttime. That actually the very, very first time that that happened, which was maybe 3 years ago or so. Um, and I it hadn't happened to me. I knew that these kinds of things could happen, but as it was happening to me, it was like, oh my gosh, what am I seeing? What is happening?
Yeah.
And I felt that I was like rising through these different like layers of experience. Um, and they were kind of like getting thinner and thinner. So it was kind of like, in the beginning, I would see all these like almost like psychedelic, colorful and energetic and moving, um and then as I would rise up, that would kind of thin out, and then there'd be like really thin golden lines
Mm.
that were like within what I had been seeing. It was like that would sort of dissolve and disappear, and then I'd see like what was within that structure or whatever. It was almost like scaffolding. Um,
Oh, that's so cool.
being able to see like the skeleton almost of those what I had been seeing. But anyway, at one point, and I just kept rising, and I would like experience different things. One of the parts was like I was in space, but these I think they were octagons, like octagonal windows. There were two of them. Sorry, they could have been hexagons, but and it was like suddenly I'm looking at space, but I noticed like, oh, there are two octagonal or hexagonal windows, and they were lined with these really thin like metal frames that had all this little etching on it.
Oh,
And
wow.
but I was looking out into space, and so at one point and so it just kept kind of changing, but where it was like, okay, now I'm in space and it's like I'm looking out of these windows, but I'm looking at space. But one of the phases that I kind of went through took me to this spiral. Like I was looking down. It wasn't really a spiral, but it was like, it was like everything was almost like looking down at a labyrinth,
Hmm.
sort of,
Yeah.
and there were all these different levels too. So it wasn't just like looking flat, it was like looking, but there was all this depth in it too. And what I understood all at once as I was looking at this was that this was time. Like I was
Wow.
looking at time. And so I put my awareness on something like on one spot in this circle, this spiral. And was I was looking at a little girl that was like 9, let's say, and there was a like kind of an oppressive sky, a heavy sky, and she was standing by a horse, and there was like a big tree there, and then behind them was this like stone house. It looked like it was maybe like a 2-story, like kind of thin stone house. And I just understood that it was in Scotland or somewhere like Great Britain for sure, and maybe Scotland. Um, and it was in like the 1800s. And I just understood that by focusing on that spot, that's what was happening there. And I didn't. even really think to say, like, is that me? Like, is that a
Yeah.
former version of myself? Am I connected somehow? It was just like, oh, it just was what it was. It was like, oh, if you put your attention right there, that's what's happening right there. And and then then it all changed, and something, it was like, not, it was, I wasn't in that labyrinth or looking down on that anymore. But all the levels I understood too were the possibilities of experience within any experience. So
Yeah.
it's like, every experience has a range of possibilities. So
Hmm.
depending on where you focus within the experience dictates what your experience is. So if I were to, and it also felt like a record needle coming down on
Okay.
this. So, like, if I put the record needle on where we are right now in time and space, like you and me, Joy, are recording this meditation, or this podcast, excuse me, and that's what's happening at this point in time. And wherever we want to have there's a whole range of experiences that we can have within this one experience.
Yeah.
So at one level of this experience, we are both having an amazing time. We're so enjoying being with each other. We feel so grateful that we're getting to share this time together. Then there might be another level of experience where we're just triggering each other, and you don't like my shirt one bit, and
Nobody's happy.
and there might be something where I really stick my foot in my mouth, and I offend you, and you react to that, and it's just and you don't even want to release this episode. Um and that is totally another way that we could do this. it's
Yeah.
it's an available option that we could have, and it's just where we want to be, where we
I
want
have
to
so
have
many
that
questions.
experience.
So, do you feel like that needle in this analogy is directed by our free will choice and contribution? What do you feel directs that needle to those different potentials?
That's such a great question. So it's our choice. It can be part of our choice, but later in this same experience, I saw and just experienced myself from the perspective of like this giant sphere of light. I was just this huge sphere of light, and I had this connection that was very far away from little Kara, me, that you're seeing in front of you right now. I was connected to that human experience, but it was like, from whatever perspective this was, from a quote unquote distance perspective, it was very far
Yeah.
away, but I still was connected. And we were in constant communication, and we were in constant communication via light.
Mm.
So my human self constantly is directing. I call that my creator being. So that was
Yeah,
like,
like your higher self could be
yeah,
your highest version of you, or soul self, or any of those words could kind of plug in
any of
there. Is
that
that
is
right?
fine.
Yeah.
Yes. So what came to me in that state was like, this is my creator self, or I don't even remember,
Yeah.
but I identified like the little tiny little spark of light was Kara, like me, my human self. And I understood that Kara is constantly telling that huge sphere of light what experience to project based on her. And it's all communication by light. And of course,
Wow.
light, if anybody has done any level of metaphysical studies, or even scientific studies, they understand that light is energy. Light is a communication frequency. It's there's a lot of talk when you start learning about these things, about frequency and vibration. Frequency is the measurement of vibration, but the higher in frequency we go, that tends to give us a more positive experience. Just kind of very, very oversimplifying everything,
Yeah.
um, but I am always, and the same is for everybody. I'm just using myself as an example,
Yeah.
but
No, it's a great example.
we're all doing this, and it's we're communicating what we want our experience to be based on our light and based on our frequency. So the more that I am in a high frequency, then I am emitting a stronger light, and my higher self, my creator being, is receiving that communication saying she wants that level of experience. She wants a
Yeah.
high frequency experience. And so we're doing this unconsciously most of the time, but we also can choose to become aware of the thoughts that we're thinking. So if we go back to even in meditation,
Yeah.
becoming aware of the thoughts, but even when we're outside of meditation, becoming aware of the thoughts that we're entertaining, aware of the thoughts that we hold on to, because thoughts may come in that are not high vibrational, that are not
Hmm.
serving us. And they may come in, and we don't have to get really judgy with ourselves if we think, you know, oh, I recognize that I am entertaining this thought of jealousy or greed or anger or sadness or, any of these, or hatred, or any of these lower things that I don't enjoy feeling and I don't
Yeah.
want to make bigger in my world. So, oh, I notice that I'm feeling this way. So let me tune into that. Let me see, we can kind of become curious about what's going on there.
Hmm.
Is this true? Am I entertaining something that's even true?
I love that
Or
question.
am I
It's one of my
telling
favorite
myself,
questions. Is that true?
yes? Or am I telling myself some story that is actually not even true and isn't
Yeah. Or whose
benefiting me?
voice is that? Is that a past something someone said to me, for example? Or, yeah.
Yeah. So we do have, even though this is happening subconsciously, it's happening behind the scenes, the more we get into our own creatorship and take responsibility for the thoughts that we think and the words that we speak, the actions that we take, then the more we kind of come into harmony with that creative force
Yeah.
that's helping to drive our experience here, and we can amplify the light and receive that back in our lived experience.
That's so cool. And it really, I always learn so much in chatting. And this is true now. In my work, if I'm doing like a psychic reading for someone, the way I believe is that no one can definitively predict the future. I don't think it's pre-decided for us, but the way I explain it to people is it so resonates with everything you just said. I'll explain it as I can become aware of potentials and possibilities, and then you can use your free will choice to navigate towards or away. And in the way you're describing it, the way I keep seeing it, I keep seeing that MC Escher painting where it's like the staircases that go around and
Yes.
around, and it's not really a spiral, but it also is, and it's all existing at the same time. But
Uh-huh.
it's like the dominant frequency, perhaps, or where they're resting most of their attention will probably help decide which of these possibilities they're kind of pointing their radar towards and moving towards it. So the way you just described it is so fascinating, and I'm so excited because it's
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, I know what this is. I just didn't have those words or experience in that way. So I love that because we do have an element of choice, and we are here, I believe, intentionally and with that choice to have these experiences. But I love this idea, the way you're describing it, that it is this two-way communication between this human self that we have and this higher self, creator self, divine self, that the way you articulate it just helps explain or express so much more clearly how that needle's being, it's not chance. Like, it's not just, oh, you just happened to find that meditation group that was the first entry point for you.
Right. Yeah. And I love what you bring to that too, with just there are so many different ways to look at it, and they're true. Like
Yeah.
this is just one sort of facet of the prism. And when I had that experience, I was like, oh, this is how time works. Like I was like, oh, okay, I get it. And then a
Yeah.
few months later, I saw it in a completely different way. I saw it more like there were screens over it and there were like filters. And so there was like one screen, but then we all had these different filters over it, and the filters change based on frequency. And so
That
it's
makes
not
so
like
much
one
sense
person.
too.
Pardon?
That makes so much sense too. Like the lenses we're seeing the world through, the
Exactly.
culture, the way we grew up, the things we believe, the geographic location, all the things.
Right. And they were really like overlays, which, it felt very physical. Like there was physically a screen of reality. And then
Wow.
there were these overlays that each of us have. And that felt so real. And it was like, and and that was related to timelines and how you experience any moment as well, like what filter do you have on what screen. And then months after that, or a year, I don't remember, saw it as like these huge, like being out in space again and seeing these giant gears, like just huge gears. And then they were just like in they were like really thin, kind of like when I described the thin gold lines, how things started to disappear. And then there were
Hmm.
like these thin golden lines. These were just like thin lines, but they were gear shaped. And then there was another plane that was like vertical. And then there was another plane, but not just like flat because it went all over, but it was like up and
Yeah.
down. And then there was this like spinning galaxy kind of, um, which was actually, the spinning galaxy was the first sort of visual I ever had in meditation where I was like, why am I seeing that?
Yeah.
But and that was a horizontal, like spinning galaxy. And those two things eventually like intersected, and I was seeing both of them at the same time.
Wow.
But then they looked like, XY axis.
Hmm.
And it was like they came together at an angle. And so whatever angle they it was like the angle then shone light that was like a projection of reality, and that was based on your perception again, but like the gears were like time,
Yeah.
and the galaxy was like space, so like time and space intersecting, but then they're not intersecting like necessarily at a 90-degree angle. The angle keeps changing based on based on the perception of who's the witness, like who is
Yeah.
looking at and observing this reality, and what angle are they at. That changes the light, like it literally
Yeah.
changes the light, changes their perception. So three like totally different, but like experiences, but all relating to time and how we perceive reality. And the effect, like then there are always undertones of frequency and light and vibration. And so it's really fascinating. It's
It is
like
so fascinating.
there's
Yeah.
so many different layers and levels to it. So,
I
and
can't
so
wait
much I
till
haven't seen.
science catches up and proves all this in a way that people can digest and accept.
Yeah.
Wow, that's all so fascinating. I know we're already over time, which I feel like I could talk to you for 10 hours. I did want to ask you, what's a good starting point for someone who, kind of like we were talking about at the beginning, has had this experience of, I really want to do this. I feel like there's something there, but maybe it's not for me because maybe I'm not good at this. And where can someone start that's, I don't even want to say going to make them feel successful, but I think you know what I'm asking.
Yes, yeah. I go back to that guided meditation thing. I think that's a great first step for people where they can kind of take the pressure off of themselves and
Yeah.
just let somebody guide them. So again, I've got that 10-minute one on the website, karagoodwin.com. But even if if that feels like too much, if 10 minutes feels like too much, they can look on you can go to themeditationconversation.com
Mhm.
and just search for guided meditations. And I've got so many out there over the years at different lengths. Like I
Yeah.
literally have 1 minute meditate. I have a 1 minute meditation out there. I have a 2 minute meditation. I have a 3 minute meditation. There a few years ago. So you want to kind of just do a search to make it easy. But that's such a great first step because
Yeah.
you don't have to go and study like and learn the techniques. You can just dive right in and just take it easy on yourself. Like keep the
Yeah.
expectation light so that you're not like, you know, man, I thought this was supposed to be easier. I'm
I
not good
guess
at
I have a part B to this question too. um, for me, I try to encourage people too that it try it at different times of the day, because maybe one time feels more spacious, or and my kids are big now, they're grown now, so that's changed a lot over the years. It might not be a okay, this is the way I do it forever. Do you feel like that's part of it too?
Yeah, I love that. I think that first thing in the morning is always a really friendly time for your body, in terms of like if you're not digesting breakfast yet, you haven't had time for, like, you haven't checked your email yet and your texts, and you're like utilizing that soft space that you get when you come
Yeah.
out of sleep. The more you can utilize that, the better. But for some people, that's not going to work. They're in a rush to get to work, or whatever it might be. So
Yeah.
I love what you're saying is be a living laboratory. If you're having
Yeah.
a hard time with what you think, if you think that you can only meditate as soon as you get home from work because that's the only time that it's going to work, and that's not working for you because you're too stressed by that point or whatever, try waking up 5 minutes earlier, and try it right in the morning or lunch break or right before bed, or whatever you can do. But it's such a vital, vital tool, with endless rewards. So keep exploring.
Yes, and we didn't even get to talk about the rewards, but I feel like there's a lot of data about that. I was just so excited to hear your experience. And of course, we're going to link not only your website where they can get that meditation and learn all about the other offerings that you have, but also the podcast, which I've been listening. There are lots of great talks on there. You ask like the questions I have, you're asking them. So I'm like, oh, this is amazing. She's
Thank
asking these
you.
advanced questions. So I love that. I know we're over. Are you up to do our spirit speed round really
Yes.
quick? It's speedy, as the
Yes.
name
And you're going to come on the
indicates.
podcast soon. So you're
I
going to
am.
be
I'm
one of
pretty
the.
excited about it.
Yes.
So we'll have to. You guys will hear about that too. I'll be linking it in the places. I'm really honored. There's a lot of great content on there. So anyone who's into any of this, I highly recommend checking it out. Spirit Speed Round, like I said, link in show notes for all that. Spirit Speed Round is really fun, easy, quick. Will you share one thing that really shocked you or was unexpected about meditation?
Over the years, one of the things, and I know I'm supposed to be quick, so
No,
it's
it's okay. You can
just,
take as much time as you want.
well, it's really more around the people utilizing spiritual space and the meditation space to take advantage of people. And that has been like
Mm,
a tough pill to swallow.
yes.
Um, and so it just, people are in such a vulnerable place when they are coming to, I mean, I feel like a spiritual connection is the most sacred, like it's sacred. And I'm just
Yeah.
continuously shocked by how many people out there are like just sucking people dry. And
It's so unfortunate. You really
yeah,
think it wouldn't be that way, but it totally can be. Yeah.
yeah. So big watch outs out there. Not
Yeah.
to enter it into it with fear, but also just knowing like you really need to be savvy and keep yourself in your power, not see somebody who is spiritually connected and like put them on this big pedestal and
Yeah.
believe that, you need to do whatever it is that they tell you need to do. You still stay in
Yeah.
your
So
power.
keep your own, be who you are, keep your wits about you. I always say do your research too and
Yeah,
look into that person a little bit and see, what do other people that work with them, what have they said? See their work, see their,
precisely.
Um,
Yeah.
and I guess they also shouldn't be asking you to do anything that feels outside of your morals or ethics or anything like that.
Yeah. Well,
Oh, it's
sometimes
such an important point.
yeah,
It's
it's weird
blurry.
because sometimes they'll say like, it's about surrender, and
Yeah.
you really, are you going to surrender? Are you going to hold yourself back? And surrender is a big, it is important,
Yeah.
and trust and all of this, but then it's like they're getting people to do just like just the twisted, you know even
Yes.
just even
Yes.
yeah, it's just
There are various documentaries that I have seen that
so
are
many.
different spiritual groups or guru type people that, and to see it from the outside, I feel like it's like, oh yeah, well, of course, don't do don't do that. Don't wear the shoes and drink the Kool-Aid, but to be inside the experience, it's just one baby half step further. It doesn't feel sudden or
Exactly.
off color sometimes.
That's exactly right. It seems normal at first, and
Yeah.
then the more like you keep trusting, and so that's where you just have to keep yourself in check. And I've been in that situation myself where I'm like, I don't know about this, but it's okay so far. And so I'll join the next webinar
Yeah.
and see how I feel from that. And then it's like, okay, this feels good. And then, and then it has gotten to, a few
Yep.
months in where it's like, wait a minute, no, no, no,
Yep.
nope, I'm out of here.
I've had what sounds like a similar experience myself. So it's,
Yeah.
yeah, there sometimes, I guess, depending how autonomous we remain, at some point there can be a place where you're like, oh yeah, no, no, that maybe no. But for some people, it's the way the marination comes, or their own lens that they're experiencing through from maybe they've, had different experiences and been part of groups that you kind of go along with to get along or whatever it is. So yeah, that's such an important conversation.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips for discernment besides just be aware and
Well, your body is giving you so many signals all the time, and our mind can override what our body
yeah,
knows. And so often when people have these sorts of experiences, they look back and they're like, "Oh, that felt off."
yeah,
But I explained it away, or somebody else explained it away, or
yeah,
whatever it is. And once we get that mind in there that rationalizes it, that can work against us. But it's difficult because we value our thoughts so much, we value our intellect so much, and so and we don't want to jump to conclusions or be closed-minded or all of these
yeah,
things, because I know with my own experience it was like, I these this group that immediately I was like, that's a cult. Immediately
yeah,
I just looked at the picture and I was like, that's a cult. And then I was like, what am I doing? I'm being so judgmental. What am I projecting into this picture? What's the fear that I'm
yeah,
feeling when why do I think I know everything? And so I dug a little bit, and then I started liking what I was seeing, and I resonated with it because it was stuff that it was a mix of things that I already knew and some things that felt more advanced that I hadn't been exposed to before. But
yeah.
because I knew the other stuff, that gave validation to the stuff that I hadn't heard before.
Mm-hmm.
So I convinced myself, like, oh, I was being judgmental. Um, and then when it eventually came, and now this group has definitely, like, pretty recently been outed as 100% a cult.
Yeah,
But um, so many people who left, who I stayed in contact with for a little while, they all had their stories of the flags that they were getting. But
yeah.
so it is tricky.
It is. Well, you said it earlier too. If someone is saying in a leadership position, this is the only way, or you have to cut out other people, or only be here, like it's the very black and white allowances, I guess,
Yeah.
is something to pay attention to too.
Yes, they
Oh,
benefit a lot if you're never going to look at any other teachings,
yeah,
because one, they can plagiarize, which I've
yeah,
seen. They'll just like rip things from other sources,
yeah,
and I'm still discovering that with the group that I mentioned, where I was just reading something a couple months ago and I'm like, oh my god, I think they got a lot of their stuff from this book. And then I confirmed with somebody who'd been with them for quite a while, and they're like, oh yeah, they were all about that book. And in the earlier days they were having everybody read it, and then they stopped kind of
wow,
pointing everybody to it so that they could claim it for themselves. Um but also, if you're then they're also your only authority as well.
yeah,
So like everything that they say that's the only input that you're getting, and that makes you more controllable if your whole world is them. And
Yeah.
that's it's but they might say like, oh, you're going to get contaminated if you or
Hmm.
however they want to put it, that
Or work through your resistance. You're resisting releasing these negative influences, or it's
right.
tricky.
Yeah.
This is a very shocking thing when we learn it in this work, that this exists a lot.
Yeah, and it's not just in our world. I mean, it's
Yeah,
personal
it's everywhere.
coaching programs, it's alternative health
Yeah,
programs.
fitness and health. And yeah, it's definitely, even in the acting world, there are some
Really?
entry points into cults with, sometimes it'll be a well-respected casting director, and you're going to get to have a talk from them in a group, and then you got to also take this class with this pamphlet and watch this movie, and it's all over.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's what you said. I mean, they're preying on people's vulnerability or desire or desperation or something in there.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Mm.
Well, I promised you 4 quick questions, so sorry, but you're so interesting. I'm really liking this conversation.
I'm
If
loving it.
you got to spend a whole day in the spirit world, you got the full tour, you got to spend time with everyone you've ever known who's crossed over, and it's almost time for you to return to your human life, and your guide tells you you have 1 hour left and you can spend it with anyone who's on the other side, who do you choose and why?
Wow. I love that thought experiment. Um, I feel like, oh gosh, I don't,
You don't have to pick just one. You can pick as many as you
well,
want.
I mean, I feel like I'm really boring, but I would say like Jesus, Yeshua. I'm not even like, I don't have like a hardcore Christian background or anything.
Yeah.
But the more that I've understood Jesus, or Yeshua was his Hebrew name,
Hmm.
from a mystical, like mystery school standpoint,
Yeah.
and some of those like the the scrolls, the Dead Sea Scrolls, like the sort of hidden
Yes.
world of Yeshua, some of that has been channeled. So it's, you know, I just find it really fascinating.
Me
And he
too.
just seems
Yeah.
like an amazing, amazing being,
Yeah.
um, with so much to share. So I would say Jesus slash Yeshua. And there's this book, I think you might love this book, called Walking Through Walls. Have you
Oh,
ever
I
heard?
don't know that book now.
The author is Philip Smith. So there are two books with that title, and one's with a
Okay.
female. It's Philip Smith is the author of Walking Through Walls. And if you do like to read, this is a wonderful, and if you're interested in the healing arts at all,
Yeah.
um, and being a medium, like there's mediumship, but it's a lot about the healing arts. But it's very well written. It's funny. It's engaging. It's
Oh, exciting.
vulnerable. It's awesome. But this is the story of his father, growing up with his father, and his father was like way ahead of his time. His name was Lou
Okay.
Smith,
Okay.
and he is just fascinating. This book is fascinating, and I think I would also pick Lou Smith.
Hmm. Okay. Is that, and that one's his dad, the dad of the
That's his
author
dad.
of the, okay. I'm
Yes.
going to link the book in the show notes too. So in case anyone else, I'm going to check it out, but in case
Yes.
anyone else
Well, and
wants
I've
to.
had the author on a couple of times. So if
Oh,
people want to
great.
check the episodes out first,
Yeah.
and then see, like if you're not a big reader, you may just want to listen to the episodes, and then you can get a flavor to
Hear
see
his
if it's worth.
thoughts. Yeah. Ooh, interesting. Okay. That's a cool answer. I like that answer. Even though we have spiritual gifts, we have very human lives. What's one quirky thing about you people might be surprised to learn?
Oh goodness. I like the things that come up seem pretty lame, but
I
well, I
doubt it,
was
but
a beekeeper. This is the first
that's
year in
very
a
cool.
while I haven't kept bees, but my bees didn't make it through the winter. So I have passed that on to somebody else now. But yeah, I love animals, love bees. I love to laugh. And so I think that's one of the things like people probably, I feel like when people are first getting to meet me, especially in real life, they expect me to be like pretty serious, because meditation is this like sacred, and it is
Yeah.
sacred.
Yeah.
But I also just love to joke around and be silly, and I love jokes, and so that
I
might
love
be
that.
something that because I feel that with people where like I'll be
Yeah.
cracking jokes and they're kind of like, what? I'm
Yeah.
confused.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, we have funny, quirky sides.
Yeah.
Will you leave us with a pearl of wisdom? What's one piece of advice that you wish you'd had earlier on in your understanding of meditation?
I would just reemphasize the importance of our own personal power and being careful and mindful about um, how how important it is to stay sovereign, to stay in our freedom. And it doesn't mean that we don't have teachers that we respect or that we don't learn from other people. Learning from other people can be a shortcut for us.
Yeah.
Um, and we also just, I just see so much like this putting people on pedestals, and like
Yeah.
doing, and it would do anything for somebody that we put on those pedestals, and that's not necessary, and it actually is it's a hurdle that we have to ultimately overcome, because the more that we're letting anybody interfere with our own connection, um, and our own intuition, then that's to our detriment.
Yeah.
We can only go so far in our own path while still like looking for somebody else to tell us how to be.
Yeah. That's great advice. Well, this has been an awesome conversation. I wish we could just chat all day.
I know,
I
so
don't know if
fun.
someone has time to listen to an all day podcast, but I feel like there's so much more to uncover. Thank you so much for being here with us today. Make sure everyone checks out karagoodwin.com. Thank you for shining your light.
Thank you so much, Joy. This has been so much fun. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks. Well, if that conversation didn't give you plenty to think about, I don't know what will. That idea of time being almost similar to a spiral, and the way that our physical universe interacts with energy and time, and the perception of the way we are in continual communication with our higher self. A lot of us say it, and a lot of us intrinsically somewhere deep inside know it, but just the way that she described it through her experience, I feel like was beautiful and powerful. And I'm really going to spend some time thinking about this and sitting in meditation and asking for more details and further look into that. If you're someone who is brand new to meditation, or like we were talking about in the conversation, you have felt like it's something that you have a hard time doing, or you don't know if it is for you, check out Kara Goodwin's website, karagoodwin.com. Again, I'm going to link it in the show notes. Her podcast is also wonderful, which I will also link in the show notes. It's called Meditation Conversation Podcast. And really check out her guided meditation, because as she was saying, don't put so many limits on yourself, be flexible, and just let yourself have an experience and practice. And guided meditation is a great entry point. So I've been honored to get to talk with Kara today, honored to have you here listening. And if you have someone in your life that says that they can't meditate, or that they're not good at meditating, or that meditation is not for them, share this episode with them, and then you guys can try it together and have some conversations about it. As we know, one of the beauties of life is opening up conversation and connection. So thanks for being here today. Big hugs, lots of love from inside Spirit Speakeasy.